just get everything rearranged here so I can see it with the screen here. Yeah, cursor won't leave my presentation. Give me 1 sec, Michael.
Sure thing.
I'm gonna move your faces off of my presentation screen so I can see.
Oh, you don't want to see our faces the whole time?
Helps to see what I'm presenting. All right. You can all see my slides. We'll make sure they progress.
Oh, that's not on me. It's actually on my monitor here. I didn't look down.
All right.
Well,
You guys ready on your end? Let me know. Michael, feel free at 15 minutes to let me know. Keep me on track here.
Sure.
I'll time in my own bit.
Lights down.
okay. Yeah. All right. I think we're good on our end.
All right, well then we'll go ahead and start. My name is Marcella Apple. I am the Water Resource Project Manager at Benton Conservation District. And this is the Amon Creek Thermal Refuge Implementation Project. It is put in partnership with Mid-Columbia Fisheries Enhancement Group, who has been working on this project with us for several years. And then Yakima Nation Fisheries has also been working with us for the planning of the implementation through to the next phase of monitoring, which is outside of this grant. Engineering has been done by Northwest Hydraulic Consultants, Inc., and the permitting is being overseen and shepherded with the help of geoengineers. So what is this project? It is an implementation grant. We are requesting funds for thermal refuge habitat enhancement at River Mile 2.5, known as Amon Creek on the Lower Yakima River. This project builds upon current and previous work funded through Surfboard, as well as the Yakima Basin. The current contracted grant through Yakima Basin Integrated Plan, which ends in 00030 there at the bottom, is what is providing match for this implementation project, and that is contracted and secured. So this project is located at the lowest point in the basin. It's about 2.5 miles upstream of the Columbia and the Yakima River confluences near Richland and Kennewick, Washington. Specifically, this project is located on federally owned lands. It is this entire shaded area here is the habitat management unit that is owned and operated by the Army Corps of Engineers. The blue line here is the end of Amon Creek that we will be focusing on. And this is also considered, Amon Creek is also a wasteway. It is part of the Kennewick Irrigation District operations. They have been a partner working with us on development of this project. And it is utilizing and reusing some of the wasteway water from KID for benefit of fish in the lower Yakima River. So why are we interested in this site and cool water refuge on the lower Yakima River? Well, many of you know, but maybe not all, the lower Yakima River is really hot. The lower Yakima River temperatures exceed 23 degrees centigrade or 73.4 degrees Fahrenheit at base flow. These are temperatures that are at the threshold of survivability for our native salmonids. Temperatures primarily are driven by solar radiation down here in the river, along with the just continuous warming as it moves from Mabton Prosser on down to the mouth. So if you look at the image on the right, we've got the cooler Columbia River with the warm yellow Yakima River, while projects like removal of the causeway are going to be hugely important for decreasing the temperatures in the delta. We still have a hot main stem Yakima River that we have to help summer migrants get through. The image on the left, looking at the graph on the left, the gray trace, you can see my cursor, is the temperatures in the main stem Yakima River. The red line is kind of the threshold for salmon survival. And the orange are temperatures that we have collected just above the confluence, so it does get some mixing with the Yakima River currently, of the Amon Creek. So what we are narrowing in and looking at is that period of time where the migration impacts are the greatest between the late spring and the end of summer, early fall, where the temperatures in Amon are cooler than the main stem. So the lower Yakima River in-stream summer temperatures are a tier 1 key imperative limiting factor for adult migration. We specifically are looking at steelhead, sockeye, spring and fall chinook, and Pacific lamprey. So just to give us a little bit of background, thermal habitat refuge are areas of cool water that provide refuge or rest for thermally stressed adult migrating salmon. This is analogous to on a hot day, if you're out in a park and you step under the shade of a large tree to get a little bit of respite and break. Habitat, in the Lower Yakima River, we've been looking at thermal refuge for, really the past decade plus. And Berman and Quinn, even back in 1991, identified that habitat restoration on spawning and rearing grounds may not be sufficient to ensure long-term survival of Yakima River salmonids without also protecting a series of cool water thermal refuge for the fish. And the image by Ebersol is just the little black dots are fish congregating, naturally figuring out where it's cooler. So we've seen evidence of this at the mouth of Amon, with sockeye dipping into the mouth on hot summer days. This is in June. Temperatures in Amon were cooler than the main stem river, and sockeye are holding to make use of that temperature difference. So after several consecutive years of temperature monitoring and evaluation of the site, we convened a tag as part of our current surfboard grant for design and collaboratively developed our design goals. And this was all done under our current surfboard preliminary design grant. So our cool water refuge enhancement design goals included increase the area of cool water influence. So we wanted to block the mixing from that warm, hot main stem river and the incoming cool river water or creek temperatures from Amon. We wanted to increase the holding depth. The current mouth where you saw those sockeye holding out are only about 1/2 meter deep currently. We wanted to maintain at least 2 degrees centigrade cooler water than the main stem at base flow or summer conditions. And then we wanted it to have long-term sustainability. So we didn't want it to just sediment in. We wanted to be able to make sure that there was scour and some way that this is going to be a project to go on for the next 50 years or so. We wanted to ensure that it was feasible. We're working on Army Corps and federal land and in DNR. And then we wanted to minimize recreational and navigational hazards, recognizing that there are a lot of people that enjoy the Lower Yakima River for boating and kayaking. So I'm going to take a step back real quick before we move into what our actual design is, because I think it's important to know kind of the history of this land. So the Army Corps, the engineers, I'll get there, there's like an echo. Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. The Army Corps of Engineers purchased this property in the early 50s. It was part of the installation of the McNary Dam for flood control. Prior to their purchase, it was a homestead, so the land was heavily disturbed. There were a lot of ditches, irrigation lines, flood control that were put in. The Army Corps redirected the Amon Channel, which we see here, to its current confluence. So this is the man-made outlet of Amon. Naturally, Amon used to move this direction towards the delta. However, with infrastructure improvements and roads put in, it was cut off. And for flood control, Army Corps of Engineers then redirected the flows that were accumulating in Amon out to the Yakima. So knowing that the site had this history of already being disturbed, that Amon was not its natural configuration, we began to determine and examine alternative locations for the project sites and location. And what we know is that we wanted that great size and holding pool, that sustainability for scour. So Northwest Hydraulic Consultants developed 4 alternatives that we proposed and worked with our technical advisory group to examine and whittle down. So the first was just maintaining Amon in its current alignment and then putting in a low flow deflector and excavating and scouring out its current flow. The problem with this site is it's in the widest part of the river. It accumulates sediment and there is not a lot of velocity to help with scour. The second location was slightly upstream into this little bit deeper hole, but we found that the parameters in the modeling were really not that advantageous for the added cost to reroute it over location 1. Location 4 gave us the deepest hole. It's in this little constriction, so scour was great, but the cost was just too prohibitive coming in, I think around 5 to 6 million, because we had to include some bridges, which made it just not worth our scale of what we wanted to do. So ultimately, we selected location 3, which is rerouting it downstream with a low flow deflector to block the temperatures, creating a holding pool. And as you can see on the bathymetry data, we've got this constriction here that helps with river flow velocities, and puts us in this nice deep hole. So our design is a 314-foot long low flow deflector in the main stem river that creates a cooled water pool with the Yakima River at an existing deep hole with a natural constriction per scour. It's set at an elevation of 345 feet, which essentially, the reason that that's important is so that it's exceeded only about 5% of the time between July and September. So it sticks out maybe about a foot above water level during the summertime, but it's low enough that during higher flows, it's going to be overtopped, and those flows will help scour out the pool. The deflector occupies about 25% of the Yakima channel width, still leaving a lot of room for navigation and recreation. And then the channel is designed to decrease the export of sediment and material to the pool through, and I'll get into that briefly when we look at the design. And then we are also doing some extensive riparian restoration within the floodplain. We're removing invasive Russian olives, replanting with native cottonwoods and riparian understory species, and creating wetland. So the channel realignment design, just to give you an overlay of what it looks like up close on the site, and I'm not going to go into too much of the details, they're in the application, but we have this slightly sinuous channel, which is going to help with sedimentation as we head down into our pool with our deflector. These are the staging areas. This is the current channel, which will be backfilled and revegetated, and I can get into a little bit more of that in a moment. The channel itself is a wide trapezoid, so we wanted to make sure it was stable, that it could handle the flows from irrigation districts, some of the ups and downs of inundation. It has a wetland bench that will help us with creation of the trees and the planting so that they can be sure to get their feet wet. And then it's got this small shallow base at the bottom. So the low flow deflector and the cold water pool design, we are going to be excavating out some of the bank to open up and create this pool. So instead of moving out further into the river, we're going to cut back a little bit. It'll be sloped 2-to-1 and revegetated with native species along the side. Right now it's barren and degraded along this section. We have a apex log jam that is going to be installed that helps bring that water flow to overtop. So right now, NHC is currently in the water lab doing a physical model of this design where they have created a laser cut 3D structure, which kind of when they talk to me about it sounds like a whole bunch of Lego blocks where they are putting it in an actual flow chamber, and then they are able to manipulate the little pieces to refine and tweak it, and that's what's going to get us from our current 45% design closer to our finished design. And so that work will be done here in the next month, and we will have that report. So the deflector itself is made of clean gravels with wood for the apex design. So real quick, our construction sequencing and timing, we get to make use of both the 2 windows in Amon Creek, the in-stream water work windows. It has both a winter and a summer work window, and then the in-stream water work window during the summer for the Yakima River. So, we will start by clearing and grubbing 20 acres of Russian olive and the site. They will be mulched and left in place as suppression. Install temporary stream crossing that allows us to get over the current Amon. We will excavate out the new channel, putting the spoils down to the south, and then defish the existing Amon channel, removing the plugs and diverting flow into the new channel, placing then fill, got ahead of myself, into the channel, backfilling, and then eventually we are going to reseed and finish the site work. So one of the things I want to note is that we've got 27,315 yards of material we're excavating. All of that will be reused on the site, and we are not importing or exporting any materials. So the Cool Water Refuge, this is just the modeling results where we looked at our design to see if it's functioning the way that we anticipate. The left is the current Amon Creek, and you can see how quickly that temperature is lost. The new design, we did a conservative 10 CFS, which would be the extreme kind of drought conditions. Our creek really runs closer to 30 to 60, and last year with the late July flows was much higher. So what you can see is we do have this nice cooler pool, especially up around the flows that we anticipate to have most of the time. We also, along with the physical modeling they're doing now, they had done some computer modeling to make sure that we are going to have the flows and scour that we anticipate. So this shows the low flow deflector at base flow conditions around 800 CFS. Little bit higher flows as we get into late spring, or what we would see kind of in early fall with the 2500 CFS. And then as we start getting into winter, overtopping. And then we expect some decent scouring between the 2-year, 5-year, and 10-year return periods to help keep that cool water pool cleaned out. So our current project schedule, we right now are still working on some of the permitting. It's taking a little while as there's a nexus with the federal site and landowners. We have had the JARPA and the biological evaluations are submitted, but we are waiting on the HPA and the city permits until we are a little bit farther in the design. However, we are in constant communication with them. The final design will be done in August. And then we are working on cultural resources. Those are initiated at the government to government level because it is federal land again. So we have the resource firm, cultural resource firm contracted, and they are working through the ARPA process and surveys currently, and that'll be done by June and submitted. The site prep and clearing, we are hoping if all of our permits come through, will be spring of 2024 through winter of 2025. With the realignment in the spring and summer of 2025, low flow deflector installation will be during the in-water work window of summer 2025, with revegetation sometime between fall and spring of 2026. So quickly, I'm going to go through just the highlights of our budget because looking through numbers online can be a little tedious. But what I want to point out is that these have all been developed with NHC, who has done other cool water restoration habitats on the Pond Array. They are some of the first ones that have designed and actually installed them. So the total project cost, including our administrative costs and indirect for the project, is $1.4 billion. We put in this ask at $610,458 with our contracted match funding of $107,748, which is our 15%. So this is the breakdown for the surfboard request. However, there is a caveat. So we do have extra money already sitting contracted that because of PRISM and the way it works, we're not showing in our 15%. And we have put in an ask with the Yakima Basin Integrated Plan, along with the Yakima Nation Fisheries, for $650,000 in the next biennium funding. And so that ask is already sitting there as they work out, similar to Surfboard, where all of their allocations and fundings fall. On top of that, Yakima Nation Fisheries and Benton Conservation District submitted a Water Smart grant, which is federal through the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation in March. If that grant comes through, we should have notice of it probably in about June or July. That will cover a large portion of the installation of this project, along with post-monitoring. However, it does require match in the amount of about $780,000, which we could then whittle down Surfboard and YBIP and use those as match for that project. So what we have done is put in this project ask at kind of what we see the maximum Surfboard ask to make it go through with the funds that we were most assured of. However, there may be some strong possibility if it comes through to decrease this ask significantly. Some of the challenges we've already kind of discussed, new type of habitat project, but we have been working with our fish biologists and our engineers who have experience in this. Cultural resources and permitting timelines can always adjust and sway things. Sediment transport, but we are doing extensive modeling and we're feeling much more confident that the site will scour and maintain. FEMA no-raise analysis, I will touch on this real quickly. Our modeling shows that there is no impact due to FEMA. And so we have submitted that letter to the city and the engineers at Army Corps of Engineers, but they have to review it and approve it to make sure that our model matches what they think it should. And then, as mentioned, funding, as we are working through all those sliding pieces that are in play. So just to summarize, we anticipate the functional lift of this project. We are creating 2,000 meters squared of cool pool water habitat. The current configuration is only 100 meters squared. The holding pool has at least 2 to 5 degrees of cooler water, meeting our goal. increased pool depth of about 2.5 meters versus the 0.5 meter, increased cover and holding capacity for adult migrants. We anticipate this will lengthen the migration timing window to help those fish that are migrating on the edge margins, especially the late spring and the late summer, early fall, to be able to get through. And then designed to naturally scour and maintain, so we don't have long-term operation and maintenance. And this work complements restoration efforts in the Delta that are ongoing, as well as helps all fish have to pass through this lower river corridor twice in their lifetime. So any projects that happen upstream, these projects are going to be critical getting them through the lower river. We also anticipate habitat improvements to the lower end of Amon Creek. There's 750 feet of added stream channel, so we've got 1,400 feet total that is going to be created. Improve hydrologic connectivity within the floodplain. We are going to mitigate some of the downstream sediment transport and erosion with a little bit of that sinuosity in those wetland benches to help it settle out, creating wetland. And just as a note, Lower Amon Creek does annually support coho spawning, while not a fish that we have talked about in this project. And historically, it used to have false chinook and steelhead use in the Lower Amon, and occasionally we still see them. But the conditions are not great. So the connections to the recovery plans, the steelhead recovery plan it lists water temperatures in the lower Yakima River create a fish passage barrier delaying migration of adult steelhead, and that's section 2.5.1, page 38. It is also identified on the tag focus list to improve thermal refugia for adults. Again, the steelhead recovery plan, mainstem action 7. And then it was also identified in the lower Yakima River assessment, which was created with surfboard funding back in 2008 to 2011, where the top priorities identified in the assessment emphasize enhancing migration conditions for focal species, including and protecting cool water refugia. Real quick, community connections. It does have an intersection with agricultural, as KID is supportive of this project and using that wasteway water to enhance the benefit of cool water refuge at the lower part of Amon. Recreational access will be improved within the HMU as we open up and clear out some of those Russian olives, also improving safety access. There is a lot of camps that tend to, that those Russian olives tend to provide. So opening up and clearing some of those sites, it also meets Army Corps of Engineers goals as they have been working to clear out Russian olives since about 2014-15. Reducing ESA liability, benefit of upstream improvements not fully realized without addressing conditions that limit adult migration. And we have multiple partnerships and community as we've been developing this project. We've involved federal, state, and tribal, as well as local level partners. We are working with LC Bass, the Audubon Society, as we talk about our planting plans and revegetation, Taptail Greenway Association as we talk about recreation, and we have another grant through ecology that has been put in to look at improvements within the Amon Basin upstream of the HMU, separate from this project, to help improve the conditions as those temperatures get to the mouth. And that project was put in also with Taptail and Washington State Department of Agriculture. And with that, I'm going to conclude.
Thank you, Marcy.
Couple minutes over. Great. Sorry, Michael. All right, so with that, are there questions that I can answer about our project?
Marcy, this is Bob Inouye. Can you hear me okay?
A little bit.
Okay, I'll speak up then. I want to focus on the recreation part that you had in your last slide. You indicated that it improves the HMU recreation areas. My first question, can you remind us what HMU stands for? And second, you said it makes it safer for hikers and bikers. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, let me go to, so HMU is the habitat management unit that the project sits on. So it's the land that is owned by Army Corps of Engineers, and it is an open access recreational area. So this is a parking lot here where most everybody comes. You can park, there's a gate, and then this whole area is filled with, this one's better. You can see there's open trails and accesses where people love to hike, bike, and wander through. A lot of this area within the the HMU has just become inundated with invasive Russian olives. And there are a lot of homeless camps that utilize that coverage. And so, there are caveats and discussions with people when traveling of please do not, wade off of it. So, what we have talked to the Army Corps about is that the clearing of the Russian olives helps open that up. We're creating more creek access, and how do we then work with our fellow partners like Toptail and others to make sure that we can enhance this area for urban recreation in a safe way.
And the safety issue was the interaction with homeless people or something different?
Yes, that's pretty much our main safety issue, is a lot of the camps down there that they have to continuously clean out.
And does your project include anything to help with the relocation of those people?
Our project does not. That takes on a kind of a city level discussion. Army Corps of Engineer is charged with enforcing down here and working through those challenges. And we have had a lot of discussions with this project that get more into the systemic issues of the homelessness down in the lower river. It touches also in Bateman Island, where there's dense places and coverage, it becomes a concern. So, I don't think removing, we don't have the budget and ways to kind of remove, and I think people will still camp down there, but I think, opening up and removing some areas near the creek where people naturally like to go is going to give them that ability to walk around there through there safely.
I understand the relocation.
I wish I had an answer for homelessness. I don't.
I understand that the relocation is not part of your project or budget. But if the partners you have happen to come up with some solutions, it would be good to hear about those before the ending of this project request.
Yeah, I will put it up with Army Corps of Engineers in the city because it has been a extensive discussion within our project.
Thank you, that's all.
Thanks, Bob.
I have a question. You mentioned support by Kennewick Irrigation District. Are they trying to provide a set flow, or is there a range of flows they can provide through that?
So we have
project.
Yeah, so we have been looking at, we've been monitoring ranges of flows, and then irrigation, Amon, our Kennewick Irrigation District has provided us with kind of what their design flows are if there is an emergency and they have to dump all of that water. So they are getting us those data. They had just recently updated them with some changes they had done. So they're getting us that data so that we can ensure that our lower end is designed to meet their needs along with what our natural flow scenarios are. And so we've been monitoring the flows the past couple of years. This only goes to March, I guess. We have a little bit more data, so. I guess, does that answer your question?
Is there a natural flow there? Is it all released?
Yes, there is natural flow. Sorry, yeah, so there is, and that's actually really what provides the cooling. So the way Amon Creek is designed, there is a west fork of Amon and an east fork. East fork is essentially where the wasteway comes in and dumps in. The West Fork is wetlands and habitat. It's a nature preserve with recreation that Toptail purchased and maintains. And all of that is groundwater, urban connectivity and recharge. And so that flows down, intersects with the incoming wasteway water, but we continue to gain groundwater and just influence all the way down as it winds through the canyon. So there is sustained flows all year round that are groundwater. And then during the summertime, we just get that enhanced bump, but it's high enough up in the system that it tends to then merge into the ponds and the canyon and meshes and cools as it heads downstream. So it's not just a wasteway.
One more. My ignorance is showing. What is a low flow deflector?
So a low flow deflector, I guess a less enjoyable term would be essentially a berm. It's a low, it's essentially a design or a spit that is put in place to block the flows. So cooled water refuge projects kind of flip some of our regular habitat design projects on their head, because we want to enhance and create cool water refuge and block the mixing of the cooler and the warmer water. So these projects are being done currently on the Columbia River to enhance cold water refuge, as well as Pend Oreille.
Hey, Marcy, this is Jen. Along those lines, I don't know enough about fish migration, I guess, to understand, are they smart enough to go downstream 300 feet if they come all the way up into this channel? It doesn't appear that there's a path for them to continue upstream. So,
yeah. I'm glad you asked that. We had a very lengthy discussion on this with WDFW that spawned a lot of investigations and look at how other cold water refuge sites, and I can send you, Jen, the designs of the other cold water refuge sites that are analogous on the Columbia and Pend Oreille, because that was that question of, if they get in here, are they going to turn around? And so we talked to Yakima Nation fisheries biologists and Pat Monk and Danny with WDFW, and all of them said, yes, they cue into the temperature. So they will, turn around and move out, and that's what they see in the sites on the Columbia River. So I can send you that literature where they tracked them, and it's all on the EPA's Cold Water Refuge page. But it's a good question, and something that, we wanted to make sure and do due diligence that, we weren't just creating a place where fish are going to get holed up and stuck.
Yeah, that'd be great. The other question I had, it's great that you're able to design it with, no fill. Are those 27,000 yards of gravels that will be excavated, that's going to be used for the berm?
No. So I should caveat. So that is just on the riparian area, that the amount that's excavated is going as backfill and upland fill sites that the Army Corps wants. The berm itself is going to be imported. We are using only clean imported gravels that are going to be part of that berm.
And they're going to be big gravels, I assume?
They are still working through, that's part of that physical model of what size they need for that material. So I can provide you with those design details, because I should hopefully have those within the next 2 months. So at this point, they mentioned that they're going to probably be medium-sized cobbles to smaller-sized cobbles that'll be put in there.
1 minute left. If there's time for maybe just one very quick question. Yes.
Hi, Marcy. This is Craig Haskell from US Fish. Just kind of a follow-up on Jen's question. So we're primarily talking about the target being adult sockeye.
Adult, any of the adult migrants that pass through here so our river really starts warming up kind of May. So it's to help I didn't put it in this image, but really to help those tail end migrants as well. So the ones that start getting trapped in this lower river as they hit down here and it's too hot, the ones that are coming in. So, we're hitting the edge margins of, the other species, and then along with sockeye and summer Chinook who come through here in the middle of the summer.
Yeah. Okay, so appreciate that. So I guess my real question is, how does this fit into sort of a potential broader network of these cool water refugia, and kind of what's the overall intended benefit? Like, I think you could get into the weeds about modeling sort of the energetic benefit of something like this, and how many of these projects it would take to kind of hopscotch fish up the river. But I'm just kind of wondering about, is there a broader plan, and how does this fit into that broader plan?
Yes, there is. So this was kind of we had done a cool water pilot project at River Mile 25 just to kind of see, what it would take to kind of put in some recharge at a very small scale. That alcove is tiny. But we have been monitoring multiple cool water sites up and down the lower Yakima River and have been working closely with Yakima Nation Fisheries and other grant partners. And so what we have done, we are continuing to, we have a YBIT grant that monitored about 6 other sites. And we have another one that's going to finish kind of modeling those and putting a couple of those into conceptual design. So the overall broader plan is, one and done is not going to be sufficient, but we also have to start here and see how it works. And really, we are going to do due diligence and monitor this project so that we have some good solid data. But then you do need to have those other places, and we have identified, they're already functioning in some form. It's really, can you enhance them so that you can have a greater amount of fish production in them from what they currently have? So Corral Creek, Spring and Snipe, Sulphur are all locations, and then there's some that we've identified up in across from Buena, all the way up into kind of some of the Yakima Nation areas. So we're working with them to, essentially strategically have several of these sites. And then the other piece, while it's great to improve cooled water, and working with the Bureau as they do their pulse flow releases, but the other piece we really have to look at is areas where we have anomalous warming in the river, such as, up behind the Prosser Pool and other locations that we need to help mitigate and bring down anomalous warming areas so that we can make improvements within the entire lower river. So it's part of an overall strategy to kind of combat some of the temperature dynamics. We're looking at Barker Ranch and whether or not we can, naturally we see cooler flows from there and, utilize his ponding and his water management systems to continue to enhance cool water influxes along that site. So I think I'm out of time, but that's my quick. I can talk endlessly on,
Yeah, thank you, Marcy.
Cool water.
We have a couple questions in the chat, and Marcy, I'll get those to you so that they can be answered separately. Thank you very much for presenting. I really appreciate it. Take care.